Okay, I've got the driver's side spindle out and mounted in a vise. The first ball joint I got to remove is this lower ball joint. I need a ball joint remover, or U-joint remover, whatever you want to call it. It's just a big C-clamp with a 7/8 bolt head on the end of it, and then some adapters for the ball joint to push up through. Now, some things you'll be needing are some snap ring pliers to put in this and open this clip up. You have to set them so that when you close them, it opens it. We'll need a hammer possibly, and a screwdriver or punch if this clip doesn't want to let go. Just go around it with a screwdriver and a hammer or a chisel and hammer and tap it, break it loose. And spray it down with some penetrating oil. This is going to be difficult. I sprayed it down earlier with penetrating oil, whenever with a wire brush. But it's going to be difficult, so I'm going to take a hammer and punch and try to dislodge it. It's starting to move just a little bit. I'm going to have to beat on it some more. Alright, I got it moving. Just watch your eyes. Should have safety glasses on and get a hold of that sticking up a pair of needle nose or pliers. I'm going to take a wire brush and clean that up some so it won't get hung up on the way out. This is a new forward ball joint. Comes with a new clip, nut, quarter pin. And I need to find a receiver that'll go over that so it can push it through it. Alright, I'll stick it on there. I need to mount the ball joint press on it. You can rent these from some of the local auto parts places. I'll spray this down with penetrating oil. Let's make sure it's centered as much as possible. Be sure not to overload your clamp too much or you'll bend the thing open. Seems a little stuck. I'm going to have to motivate it. On those ball joints, you can try a big heavy duty air chisel like this to try and drive them out, but if it doesn't work, you have to use a ball peen or sledgehammer to do it. For the really stuck ball joints, just take a sledgehammer to them to get them moving. That was easy enough, I guess. Now, a ball joint press wouldn't move that, but a sledgehammer does. That's nice. Now I'm just going to stick a bar down through here and knock the top one out. Sometimes these things need a good whack with a hammer to get them going. Like that. Once you get both ball joints out, take some 320 sandpaper and just knock the rust off the holes from the inside. Just be sure not to remove any metal, really. Just take the roughness and clean it up just a little bit. And take a straight edge of some type and knock the rust off so it's nice and flat around this hole, because the ball joints, this lower ball joint has to set flat on this rib on the inside, and your clip's going to set here, and then the ball joint inside lip has to set flat on this. You'll probably have just a little bit of gap between the snap ring out here. You want this inside to set flat so that the ball joint don't start rocking. It's better for the clip to have clearance as opposed to the lip on the ball joint. And make sure the recess on the top ball joint is cleaned out so it'll go all the way down flat. Okay, I've cleaned the holes up. Got a nice flat surface for the ball joints to rest against. It's time to put them in. Be sure and compare the size of your replacement ball joints with the original ball joints. Make sure that there's not a problem. This is 4 new Motorcraft Ford ball joints. Although one bag's bigger than the other for the upper ball joint, but the numbers are the same. There's 2 of the old ones and 2 of the new ones. And this flare or the collar is not as big on the replacement. Maybe that's to keep it out of the rust that develops along the edge of this original one. I don't know. These are actually a certain thickness halfway down on the top one, and then it's got a little recess where rust will. It's not so critical to get the rust out of there because this has a depression in it anyway. But anyway, I'm going to start with putting the top one in first. First thing I did was spray a little penetrating oil on the bores for the ball joints. That'll help aid in insulation. It'll dry out. This particular one holds real good, so I'm using penetrating oil on it. Some ball joints, especially repair ball joints, you elect to use Loctite to help hold them in there. But this is pretty thick material, so it'll be alright. First ball joint you have to install is the upper ball joint. It's a pin facing out. I used a receiver to fit this collar on the upper ball joint to press downwards. The threaded end of this ball joint press is pushing up with a receiver cap that's big enough to let this ball joint come through. If it does, it ends up flat, but you want this collar down as flat as possible, recess in here so it won't waller it out. And just make sure your screw's pretty centered around this, all around this hole. And watch your ball joint edges, that it's going in straight. You do not want to get it crooked. If you do, just rotate the clamp on the side that's the opposite side it's leaning against and tighten it down. And that should do it. Again, when installing the lower ball joint, put a applicable receiver on the top of the ball joint and a receiver cap big enough to allow the ball joint to protrude through a little bit. This one's going to have the clip on the bottom of it. Watch and make sure your ball joint's going straight. I actually took a punch and tapped that down in there a little bit and made sure it was square. It's down flat. So I'm gonna looks good. Complete contact with the spindle is what you want. No movement. Good enough. Now just put the clip on. Install a clip using silly snap ring pliers. There should be probably a little gap between that snap ring and the bottom of the spindle. If your ball joint's down all the way, there's probably a 20,000ths gap behind that clip. It's just more or less a backup thing. And the new ball joint looks good and flush. The top one's down. Need to drop the rubber boot down on this lower one. The upper one from the factory's already got a sealed boot on it. A note when installing these rubber boots on ball joints, sometimes they have an in and out road on them, where this forward one's just monotone. But if it's got a little slot cut through the rubber, it'll point away from the rotor, so if you grease it, the grease doesn't get on the rotor. Typically it would point in, is the idea behind it, but these don't have that issue. So if your ball joint came with a grease fitting called a Zerk fitting, install it now in the hole provided. It may or may not be threaded, but these things are self-tapping, because just make sure you get it started in straight, not crooked, or it'll bottom out before it's time. They usually go in till it either gets kind of hard or bottoms out, one or the other. If you apply too much force to them, they'll break off in there, and then you got a problem. I'd say probably more than 10 pounds will break them off. And the top one doesn't have a grease fitting. And there's a new Castellan nut. cotter pin. The top doesn't have one. I would have thought the factory one would have been a little tighter than that. Whatever. The bottom one's good and stiff. That's the main one that's holding all the weight up.